Hello and welcome, tacticians. Let's be honest, not all Tacticus factions are created equal, or indeed kept equal. You have your favourites, but the meta often dictates that you play others. Well, that's going to end today. This entire video series is going to be my mission to reforge the game's balance. We're going to be looking to upgrade, revamp, and even evolve all of the weaker factions to make sure that you can play with whoever that you want without ever feeling that you're choosing the weaker option. Get ready, we're making every faction viable, fun, and competitive. And today we're going to start with the Necrons. Before we get into each individual character, first of all, their living metal special rule, which regenerates 10% of their maximum health at the start of the player's turn. Now, I think this could possibly be changed to each player's turn, just to give it that little bit of an extra bonus. After all, there are some other factions, such as Gene Sealer cults, who, once you kill them, they come back on full health. So just regenerating that little bit of health every turn might just give them that little bit of extra durability. However, we could offset that by upgrading Makhotep, and whilst his adaptive strategy is, I think, absolutely fine and probably could do with an uptick on the amount of damage that those summons then deal, I really think it's the passive that needs to be looked at. With recent characters, we often see that the buffs that the passive gives is normally within 2 hexes, so extending at least the repair part to that 2 hexes would be the first place I would expect. Ideally, I think this needs to be going battlefield-wide for Necrons only, and maybe keep that +1 movement to adjacent hexes, because that is indeed very strong. Moving on to Imospekh, this is really a poor man's Ray Vass, and whilst everyone treats Ray Vass with a certain amount of respect because of her Overwatch, Imospekh is more of a laughing stock. And as such, I would certainly say that the inescapable death needs a damage improvement, so at least it's got a chance of killing some characters, at least on that first shot. The rest of it can stay the same. The fact that it's always there is absolutely brilliant and would give people a reason to use Imospekh over Ray Vass. Now, I'm not asking for Imospekh to be as good as Ray Vass, who can literally kill all 6 characters who run at her, but come on, let's make this character the danger that it should be. The active ability, I think, can remain the same. I think this is very thematic for the actual character and makes it look like it's using all of those 6 pistols against everyone nearby. Then we have probably the strongest Necron character, Aleph-Null. This character is absolutely fine. The scarabs that it swarms are fantastic and useful, and that passive healing just by moving next to another mechanical unit is great. There's nothing that really needs to be added to this character whatsoever, and it's an absolutely perfect example of how good the Necrons should be. And then on the other end of the scale, you have Thutmose, the Necron everyone wishes wasn't even here. Nobody wants to level up Thutmose, nobody wants to use Thutmose. And for good reason. It basically dies to a stiff breeze and does no damage. Now, on the tabletop, what this character enables a unit to do is actually increase their chance to get those critical hits, but that's not to be seen here. We could upgrade this Harbinger of Destruction so that, fine, let's keep the direct damage, and if we have to, we can keep it at this level, but please make this so that the critical chance of other Necrons or even other friendly characters is increased a significant amount, a bit like how Athana does on the passive. But obviously, as this would be an active ability, let's make it meaningful. Now, I'm not saying it needs to go as far as Ragnar does, but certainly have it affect Necrons more than other friendly characters. Let this character really buff up your Necron characters so they can dish out the damage that they deserve to be doing and give us a reason to use him. The Living Lightning, again, whilst it's very thematic with the fact that it's a direct damage, which I absolutely love, the amount of damage it does is negligible. And I understand that. Because of the direct damage type, it's very difficult, I imagine, to balance this correctly, because too powerful and Thutmose would be an auto-include and everything. But where it is, why even bother having it in the first place? And I guess a fix to this would be, let's start making it become more and more powerful every turn that it's actually fired off, showing that effect that the lightning is becoming stronger and stronger as the game continues. The first time that we're in melee combat, fine, have it low, but build on it every single turn. So the longer you're in combat with this character, the more dangerous it's going to be. However, that comes to the last issue of Thutmose, and that's its health, which is terrible. As I mentioned at the beginning, it dies in a stiff breeze. Let's give this character, well, maybe not more armor, but maybe one of the force fields. So you then got the armor save as well as a force field save to show that it's got that energy crackling around it, and at least will mean there's a chance that it can survive more than one turn of someone looking at it. And finally, Anuphet. And mostly I'd say this character is also fine. But, and maybe I am wrong here because I haven't actually leveled this ability up much, I think the Martial Apotheosis could do with a bit of an oomph as well. I think the Resurrection Orb is absolutely thematic and works really well with the team as a whole. So there's not much to be done here apart from just look at this passive ability, which, as I said, it might just need a damage increase to make it actually meaningful, which I think they were probably a bit worried of when the game was first created. But as we've seen later on, some of these passive abilities are very dangerous indeed now. So let's give him what he deserves. But we can't stop there, because Faction's now getting a 6th unit. And more importantly, we haven't got a legendary yet. Let's first look at possible normal units that we could add to make things a bit spicy. And my favourite 3, and we'd have to choose one of course, is the Locust Heavy Destroyer, who as you can see is something that can fly and carries a very big gun. The Lich Guard, who is going to be very uniquely identifiable because of that big shield and sword that they carry. And finally the Triarch Praetorian, who's actually a jump pack and melee troop. Now out of the 3, personally I would say the Locust Heavy Destroyer would be the best option to add. You can give it the movement 3, it's got fly and a heavy weapon, which would make it quite unique amongst, well, virtually everything. We've certainly got enough of the other 2, which are close combat specialists, and with the upcoming Farsight boosting shooting, let's give the Necrons something to add. And yes, I did say that Heavy Destroyer should have movement 3 and also range 3. Let's give the Necrons something that nobody else has. Unmitigated reach through flying and that heavy weapon. Of course, if he wants to use the heavy weapon to the maximum potential, he's going to want to stay still. And given the unique design, it'd be very easy to pinpoint him on the battlefield, but much harder to lock it down and kill him, which is something that the Necrons need. And what about the legendaries? Well, as I see it, there's 3 very strong contenders. Orokan the Diviner, who is a Chronomancer, so we can have some very fun active ability, maybe moving either the enemy or yourself back in time to undo what was already been done, or to enable a second turn of your character from where they started. Illuminator Ceres, I think, is the outsider here. I wouldn't see him being used at all. Plus, the model, believe it or not, is about the same size as a Demon Prince. And considering we're just getting one of those as a machine of war, unfortunately, this character who's trying to decipher the meaning of life, as you can see from that poor Imperial Guardsman, I think won't be coming to Tacticus anytime soon. And finally, possibly the favourite for everyone is Trazen, the Infinite. And the one thing I would do with this guy is, well, give him trinkets which trigger depending on who the enemy are. And the more factions that he is against, the more trinkets that he gets. And I would restrict this to only Imperial, Xenos and Chaos, but I think having, instead of rotating set of 3, which we've seen on a number of characters now, the most recent of course being Volk. This really does depend on if you're facing Imperial, Chaos and Xenos, and as I said, if they've brought all 3 to the fight, let's use all 3 of our trinkets. Yeah, he's a legendary. He should be good. However, I would say out of the 3, if I would be a betting man, unless they've got a new miniature for Trazen the Infinite coming out alongside that new 500 worlds that they're doing, I reckon we're more likely to see Oricum the Diviner, just because that miniature is much newer and is more in line with the style that they're currently going for. However, if it was me, it would always be Trazen. Now, you've heard my thoughts, and I would love to hear yours. Both who would you add to the Necrons, and also what faction would you like me to cover next?